Thursday. It's actually looking like fall. Can you see pumpkins behind me? Those are pie pumpkins, and I'm going to be cooking them live at some point too. Um, I know it's my favorite thing to do is to cook pie pumpkins because it's like magic. Anything that's like magic, count me in.
I can't
Um,
wait to watch that because I take the lazy way and I just get the cans because I haven't successfully cooked pie pumpkins.
Oh, well, we can even talk about that while everything is propagating. And you guys, as you're coming in, tell me hello. Tell me if it looks like fall where you are, if it should look like fall. Some of you guys are way up north, and in the UK, is it starting to look wintry? Tell me all the things. It looks very fallish. You can kind of see behind. It's like an impressionistic. You can see a few of the golden colors. It's going to be 80 degrees for the next 3 days. It's been cold. It's very weird. And Mona and Apple are with us, and so we are very happy with that. Apple, we were chatting about you before we even
We
came on.
were. You
See,
have great recommendations, Apple.
we're getting all the things and learning all the things together. Um, and I feel like I should give you a quick pumpkin pie tip because there's no shame in using canned pumpkin. So let me
Of
be
course.
clear about
Of
that because this
course.
is this is a show about no shame, being who you are, right? And also with butternut squash, I like to get them whole when I can, but I usually try to have some canned puree and some frozen
Hmm.
already cut up butternut squash.
Hmm.
But you can poke holes in that thing as is and put it in your Instant Pot or your slow cooker if it fits. And then you just let it cool. You cut it in half, you scoop out the seeds, and actually when you scoop out the flesh, it'll puree itself.
Yeah, but you
It's
can't do that with the pumpkins, so they're too big, right?
No, oh, pie pumpkin versus jack-o'-lantern. These are some of my favorite
You
topics.
got the
I'm like,
smaller ones.
we're not going to talk about body positivity. We're going to talk about pumpkin positivity today.
I feel like pumpkin positivity is going to get us to body positivity. Like that's part of the path.
Okay, good, good. When you see the little pumpkins, and now sometimes they have little faces on them. And actually, okay, I have shorts on and my like house shoes because I wasn't going to get up. Um,
You're like the quintessential Zoom person with your shorts on. Well, you don't have your underwear on though. Like if you had your underwear on, then you'd be the quintessential Zoom person.
well, I will. I go live in my pajamas. I will do that. So, like, this is a small, medium,
Okay.
smallish pumpkin. And this
So
is,
it's
and
kind of like the large kabocha.
yeah. And so, and the reason you want to use these instead of your bigger than your head carving pumpkins is the wall is thicker and you get more
Okay.
actual vegetable. And when you get, oh, I put the pumpkin down here, and Max thinks someone knocked on the door. That is what's going on my side. It's my fault. I'll
I'm
take
familiar with that.
responsibility. He's like, it's okay, Bunny. Come here.
Tell them
Come
it's
here.
just the pumpkin.
Come here. Do you want to say hi to the people? Come here. Come
Oh,
here, say hi to
yes.
the people. No, don't smell the bad. Come here. We did
Aw.
a lot. I'm gonna have to slide him across the floor. He doesn't want to come. Come here.
Let's see.
Say hi.
Oh. Oh, oh, he's gorgeous. Hi, buddy. Aw.
But we have a cat bed that's too small for him. And when we unboxed something a couple of days ago, he was in the corner laying in the cat bed.
You know, back in Austin, we haven't brought them here yet. We have a couple of pity mixes, and Getty, our big guy, who's so sweet, he likes to do that. He'll curl himself up, like, and he's
And
over 60 pounds, onto the like tiny little cat bed. It cracks me up.
it's like,
It's like
I
he
love
wants to
the
be a
cat bed.
cat.
I know. Well, Max thinks he's like a little neurotic chihuahua type in the inside. So he thinks he's a pocket puppy and he's scared of all the dogs. And he'll like have a toy and he'll pull on the tag and he's just like, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. We don't have doggy therapy. To
I
kind
know. I
of,
always say our guys they think they're lap dogs, but they're like 60 pounds.
Right, right. Oh, we're getting all kinds of good, like, people are feeling the fall. Somebody has snow in Edmonton. I thought you guys might
Wow. Already?
already. And
Yeah.
in Northern California, it's 47. All the
Is
wonderful people are here.
what is it here today in San Francisco? It is 55, high of 62. But of course, it depends where you are in the city because there are so many different microclimates. It's like yesterday, we were in our neighborhood and I walked outside and I had like layers on and I was really hot. And we had to go take care of our friend's cats up, just like, I don't know, 15 blocks away. And the temperature, I swear it was 10 degrees colder. So I was like, oh, I'm glad I layered.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing, the weather right now. Like, we should be full
Mhm.
on fall. But
Yeah.
and Apple was saying one of the attendants at her local market thought all the different squash were just decorative. And
Oh,
and I
yeah.
love this gasp because I would have totally gay gasped at that. I had fun sharing all the different ways to bake and enjoy squash. And last year I went to this place. It went and Lisa already knows I'm forgetting all the words today. I'm finally, my brain is unwinding, but it's not retrieving things very fast. But Perkins Orchard, no, Perkins has like this vegetable stand that's literally behind someone's house, but now it's like the whole backyard. It's been there since his grandfather had it. It's kind of amazing. And for
Wow.
$100, you can get one of those like Lowe's garden trailers that you pick up stuff.
Hmm.
Fill it with all the pumpkins until it won't fall out. And they have the giant ones. They've got the
Wow.
Cinderella ones. They've got
Oh
the
man, I want to
Blue
go there.
Hubbard. And so I've been nervous to go just because it's been so warm that there's no way I
Yeah.
can cook and store and do all with that. But maybe
Yeah,
I'll
because
take
they
you.
won't keep very well if it's too warm, right?
No, and that happened last year a little bit after I went. It was
Mm.
not the experience I had hoped for.
Oh no, no. Well,
Oh,
it's interesting what you said about that pumpkin though, because I first of all I shamed myself, which was talking about body positivity. I'm like, I'm just get lazy and use a canned pumpkin, which is not lazy at all. It's a who I always have canned pumpkin in my cupboard. But the one time I did use a pumpkin, I was trying to be resourceful and sustainable, and it was a jack-o'-lantern, and I didn't want it to go to waste because it hadn't started rotting and falling in on itself. It was still good. I thought, oh, I'm going to recycle that. I'm going to make pumpkin pie. And it was, it didn't come out good at all because, of course, you just explained it. The pumpkin was too big. And I was like, how does anybody do this? There's nothing here.
right. It's a very thin wall, and that's why
Yeah.
I always feel like I have my like little
Yeah.
PSA. Pie pumpkins
Pie
equals
pumpkins.
pie. But also when you buy the cans of pumpkin, did you know, fun fact, it's not always pumpkin. A lot of times it's butternut squash or kabocha
I'm not
squash or
surprised. Yeah, I'm not
yeah.
surprised to hear that.
It's
Yeah.
interesting. And does it matter? No.
No.
It matters
Well, my
not.
favorite My favorite is kabocha. That's my absolute favorite. I learned about kabocha back when I was macrobiotic in the 80s, and it's such a versatile, rich type of pumpkin. And one year I used to do this morning show on the local Fox station in Austin, and I had to do a pumpkin themed meal. And I did 3 dishes using kabocha instead of pumpkin, and that was really fun. So it's kind of my go-to kabocha. And because of where I live here in Inner Richmond in San Francisco, I've got all these Asian markets and they've always got stacks
Mm.
of them. So it's super easy just to get one.
Oh, I love that. And just one more pumpkin tip, and then we will for real get on topic. I promise no more swirling for at least 3 minutes. Marilyn was saying, because Marilyn's awesome, she dehydrates and makes pumpkin powder. So she dehydrates the pumpkin
Oh,
and then
wow.
grinds it either in like a Vitamix dry jar, or
Hmm.
you could do almost anything there, and then you can reconstitute it. That gives me an idea of maybe going, and then I could try and cook all the pumpkins and dehydrate them. Cheryl's gonna kill me. I just want everyone to know that
I am
too.
just trying to picture this process with you with your giant cart of pumpkins and then like the process of dehydrating them all. I'm like, this is going to be good. I want to see this.
This will be like a 36-hour live.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, that's fantastic.
Oh, I don't know if you guys could hear a little voice in the background, but I will fully admit to being at fault. So like, since we didn't have time to cook them all, I just made this beautiful pile of them outside the door, and it looked so Instagrammable. And of course, I
Lovely.
immediately forgot that they existed. So then months later, Cheryl is having to take the ick that it became.
Oh.
And she's like, I'm not cleaning up after them again this year. As
Oh, it's
well
terrible.
she
They
should.
melt.
Oh yeah. Oh, it was not nice. Cooking Princess has something to get us on track or get me on track. People
Oh,
should
great.
feel good about the choices they make in meal prep, which in turn reflects their body image due to nourishing their bodies.
Amen, sister.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing. And I like the way you mentioned it because I think we do that. I know that people do that when I go, hi, I don't know you, blah, 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 blah. And they want a fun fact. You're like, well, I'm plant-based. Or people ask me what I do. So I have to talk about it while I'm a vegan cookbook author, right? And I try to
Hmm.
just throw it out there as non-judgmentally as humanly possible. And the first thing I get back is, well, I don't eat that much meat. Or,
Oh, I know. People
well,
get really
I don't,
defensive.
right. And
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm totally not going like, I'm a vegan cookbook author.
Yeah.
Right.
Do
I'm
you
like,
eat meat?
yeah, it's your
Yeah.
business. It's your business. Now,
Yeah.
does the heart inside me want everyone not to eat meat so animals are happier? Of course. So that I'm putting that out that goes without saying. But sometimes I think we talked last time kind of about the obvious judging and talking that happens. But I think there's even on this other side, these like unconscious biases too. Like
Hmm.
all these people who, if they weren't around me, they never would have said that.
Mm. True.
I don't know. Do
True.
you feel like that comes up a lot too for you with the whole food plant based community?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I want to go back to remembering when my life was transformed in very positive ways when I went plant-based. And wanted everybody who would listen, anyone who would listen. I was so excited about this thing I discovered. And so I try to remember that because, most of the people I know got in, who went whole food plant-based, many of whom lost a lot of weight. Those are the stories we read about all the time, or they, incredibly, which is one of the reasons why so many of us are following it, drop their cholesterol, reverse their type 2 diabetes, reduce their inflammation. And so, I think the intention is so pure that like I had this experience, I want to share it with everyone. But then, I know I've probably not shared the message in a way that makes other people comfortable, not intentionally, but I can think of times in my life where I was so like I didn't want to hear about anybody eating anything else. And I don't know, maybe it's because I'm older and wiser, and also I have more knowledge, as studying and practicing, having doing what I do, and I've had the experience of people having transformation on all different levels. They're 100%, 90%, 80%. There's everyone's journey is different. Every body is different, right? Um, and so but I think it's really important to be mindful of how we talk about it because of that, because, everyone's experience with food also is very different.
I do agree with you on that. And Cheryl and I just gave a talk in a group last night. And by giving a talk, I mean we just had a conversation. So lest it sound too fancy. And some of the people are very interested in her story because like we came on Chef AJ's and she was the reluctant spouse who got off the diabetes medicine, right? And
Hmm.
everybody
Hmm.
wants to get their reluctant spouse, sister, best friend, next door neighbor.
Absolutely.
And kind of the big thing there was it had nothing, well, this one kind of had to do with me because she was really freaked out when I had my liver biopsy. So
Mm.
that did, but I think we see either like super positive improvements But I've also seen people like, I think this year I'm almost, I think I'm a half a pound from losing 30 pounds. And so
Mm.
and Cheryl has lost over 30 pounds this year so far. And that's even a little bit before the McDougall program too, just to be
Hmm.
very transparent. And people will be like, oh, what are you doing? And you go, oh, I'm eating whole food, plant-based, no oil. They're like, oh, mm-hmm. Right. And like, I'm not, going door to door saying,
Hmm.
hey, look at me before, look at me now, look at me this,
Hmm.
no, because I think it is getting a little bit older. And I would also like to add for me a little bit tired. I'm a little bit tired and I cannot convert the world. And so I no longer want to. However, and I know this is true for you too, if someone wants help,
I was
it's
just thinking
so
that. Yeah.
glorious to be able to
Hmm.
be there and to provide some support and to provide some information or guidance or a recipe or that's a good brand. But I think as you get older or as you've kind of gotten off of the high of finding the new thing that really worked for you, I think it is very tiring talking to people who just really don't care. They're not, it's not going to change them. And I think
Hmm.
one of the things to remember too is that I always try to sit back and go, if someone said this to me but inserted meat, would that make me give meat another chance?
Interesting conversation or thought. Yeah.
Right? Because if it was something that, okay, well, this is put to me in such a way that I could be open minded and go, okay, I can see your point. Obviously,
Hmm.
my belief system is such that I would never be convinced.
Right. Well,
But
that's the thing I was thinking. Yeah.
and because
You might have to use a different example.
well, I think just have it, if
Because
someone's, yeah,
there's so many, and that's another conversation because, and I wrote about this on my website, vegan versus plant-based, because I think for people who don't know about either one of them do get confused about that. And that's the conversation sort of about what we're having is there are different paths there, and that's where I become very, um, I want to make sure that as a whole food plant-based nutrition coach, that I make it as inviting as I can to everyone because I also am vegan and I'm a climatarian and I'm very passionate about those things. And so I don't want someone who wants to go vegan for ethical reasons think that it's too restrictive because of you have to be 100% whole food, plant-based, no oil, blah 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 blah, because that's not, there are people who need that and want that, and that's going to be helpful for them, but for someone who's just trying to get off the meat, that's not necessarily going to be so helpful. So they might have to start with a Beyond Burger, which in my book is great if they're going to go from a beef burger to a Beyond Burger. And where the conversation gets murky and where I don't really enjoy reading about these, lifestyle doctors and plant-based people criticizing that, like, this is not a health food. This is, you know, it's going to bring down mankind, if you eat a Beyond Burger and an Impossible Burger. And that's where I don't agree at all. And those are the things that are going to prevent people I think those are the things that are going to make people think we're too militant and restrictive, and you can't make change.
it's hard because vegan and whole food plant-based. So let's say
Hmm.
there's meat eaters, there's a wall, there's vegan up here and whole food plant-based down here. And people think all the whole food plant-based is the same. And meat
Hmm.
eaters are thinking everything on that side's the same. And I think in some ways we want to make it seem easy. And it is easy to get someone to come across that wall to get a Beyond Burger, to know that
Hmm.
they're not leaving their familiar foods. And I think
Hmm.
what I see happen a lot of times, and I started vegetarian a long time ago,
Mm-hmm.
and then went
Mm-hmm.
vegan in like 2010 or something like that. Um, is At that point, I don't know if I saw all the different diets, and sometimes it depends on which one you see first, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like vegan is compassionate. It's not necessarily
Mm-hmm.
compassionate to your health. So before
Mm-hmm.
anyone says that, please understand, I'm trying to look at it from this other side, and it's like, okay, I know there's things happening that I can easily be a part of stopping.
Mm-hmm.
I can do my,
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't go and canvass for candidates, but I vote. And so to me, it's the same thing. It's not changing the
Yeah.
entire world, but that's a piece I can do. And then I think when you get to whole food plant based, and the reason I think the audience skews a little older is I think oftentimes it's a health issue that spurs someone
Mm-hmm.
on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then
Well,
oh, go ahead. I'm so
mhm.
sorry.
No, well, I think that so much of what you're saying is true. And there's now I'm the one who's having a brain fart because I wanted to go back to something that I can't remember what it was, but I do want to say that I agree. You can be vegan and not be healthy if you're living on Oreos and all the vegan junk food. And as a vegan, you get excited. We're like, oh, there's no animal products in that. Like that's the thing I'm avoiding, right? But at the same time, I am a whole food plant-based nutrition and lifestyle coach. I believe I see, I've experienced, I witness, it makes all the sense. There's science to back it up. It's like the health, like one of the most healthy ways for you to eat, the blue zones, yada, yada, yada. Um, but, and it's true. For people like my husband, and I believe Cheryl, like the Beyond Burgers and Impossible Burgers were really important for them on their journey, right? However, I personally believe and live that you can have those things as part of a healthy whole food plant-based diet, not as the center of your meal. Now, the only thing I want to say about that is if you're someone, and like you said, a lot of the people who follow this way do skew older because they are, they've reversed or are trying to reverse some age-related chronic disease from years of um, standard American diet. Then you do want to consider being more strict about that. And that's where it comes down to the individual. And and I think I mentioned this last time, like, some of the rock star, I've had meals out in restaurants with a couple of the plant-based, whole food plant-based lifestyle doctors who they promote very strictly no oil, SOS free, whole unprocessed foods. But, because they eat that way most of the time, because they mostly eat at home and they prepare their own food, they allow themselves to have, a meal at a Thai restaurant or at a vegan restaurant where it's not salt free, oil free, you know, sugar free. Um, but they can do that because they don't have health issues. They're not battling, they're not trying to reverse something. I can do that because I'm not, struggling to reverse a heart disease or diabetes or some serious inflammation. So you really, it's going to depend on the person. But I think I just want to have the conversation because what upsets me is when I see some of these people who I respect, they're my heroes, going out of their way to just really point out the evils of some of these foods when I'm like, could you instead put like a McDonald's burger there and not like a Beyond Burger? Or can you put, I just think that it's look at the real thing. That's the science is really showing us that high amounts of animal products, this is what causes the damage in our body, the highly processed foods. While Impossible Burgers and Beyond Burgers no doubt are processed foods, let's really focus on the one that got us here to begin with. It wasn't the Impossible Burger, it wasn't the Beyond Burger, it was too much to that standard American diet, right? Big steaks and
Mm,
big, just our meals centered around meat and eggs and dairy and bacon for a very long time.
I totally agree with you. And one of the things that I think is that once, so like the whole food plant-based community really is on a wall from the vegan community. Once you get over into this side, right, there's like a little wall between. And
Well, I don't know. I think a lot of people who go whole food plant-based, if they're not interested in the ethical aspect or that they're doing it strictly for health, I, I find that most of the people I've met end up on with their leg on the other side too.
I
They
agree.
they
I do
become
agree with you.
very concerned with the ethical aspect of it, with the environmental impact.
I just feel like when people first come over, or if someone's a professional in one portion of that, that it becomes a little more tunnel vision. It's kind of the same way,
Hmm.
like how while we're having these body positive talks. I feel this is kind of very
Hmm.
similar because like we're talking about vilifying kinds of bodies. Also, we're talking about
Hmm.
vilifying kinds of foods,
Hmm.
and while I am not saying that someone should go around going, you know what? If you ate a couple of Beyond Burgers a week, that'd make you feel better, because that's a lie, right?
Mm. Mm.
And so
True.
it's to me, and that's why we do McDougall 90 to 95%. Is so
Hmm.
like when we were on vacation, we went to a vegan slash non-vegan. It was like an equal billing little bar with bar food with some friends. And so I had and I've told everyone we had a grilled vegan cheese with tomato soup and a vegan hot dog, which is the most processed
Mm.
foods that we've had since we've done the McDougall program. And we didn't feel great after. During, it was pretty fun. Also, it didn't trigger in us, and we're paying attention to this, because like when you look at, if you look at just the whole food plant-based, people who identifies that, then whole food plant-based no oil, SOS, SOFA's free, kind of the more you
Hmm.
get a little more restrictive. And and I love what Chef AJ says, which is eat the least restrictive diet that gives you the results that you're looking for, both
I
health and
absolutely love that.
physical.
I
And
absolutely love that.
it's a brilliant statement. And so it leaves it up to the individual. How does your body feel? How does, it's not,
Hmm.
well, I don't look like the Vogue model on the cover.
Oh, yeah, we'll get to that. Don't get
We've
me
got
started.
time.
But but I do want to say that, so this is a really important conversation about starting where you are, because I've worked with people who I'm thinking of one client who I absolutely loved. He was a sweetheart Texan, drove a pickup truck, came from the country in Texas, and his regular diet, he came to me because he had to start taking diabetes medication and, cholesterol medication, and he was just tired all the time. And his regular diet was driving through, in Texas, Whataburger is very popular. It's a drive-through burger place. Driving through, the fat where he was living was what would be some would consider a healthy food desert, because it was mainly strip malls with fast food places, and there was no Whole Foods or Co-op or anything. And so when he came to me, switching to a Beyond Burger made actually did make a difference for him. Like he made a few small changes. He stopped eating the Whataburgers and he would have a Beyond Burger. He stopped getting, the drive-through French fries, and we worked on having him. He kept a cooler in his truck because he had a commute to. He worked at Whole Foods in corporate, and he kept a cooler in his truck. And he started making hummus, and I taught him how to make my raw cashew queso, and he'd bring, cut up vegetables and some baked chips. And so he started making these small changes. But for him, the step away from the meat was a huge step. But I've also had, clients I've worked with who, actually, I was having a conversation at Millennium last night with a guy who I'm going to start working with, because he exercises every day. You look at him, he's slim, trim, he's, doesn't have any weight issues. He's been plant-based, he said, for over 40 years, and his A1C, he can't get it into a normal range. That's his, the blood sugar that indicates insulin resistance, right? So he's not diabetic, but he's insulin resistant. And so I'm really curious. I'm like, well, there's so many different factors we can be looking at, but he doesn't fit the profile of somebody um, who would have insulin resistance. So again, it's starting from, so we're going to start from where he is. I don't really know where that is. I know he says he's been plant-based for this many years. He could go through drive-through plant-based restaurants all the time. I don't know. That might be how he eats. So, so again, starting where we are, and also very, very important to be able to listen to our bodies and to, like you said, you didn't feel great after that meal, and so really being able to listen to our bodies and notice what makes us feel better and the things that make us feel crappy.
What was kind of cool, so like we were like, oh my God, I can't wait till we get to home and we can make our own oatmeal. And I'm like, oh, we can have some potatoes because we brought something to cook potatoes in and we cooked them for 3 days. It took,
What
so
did you bring?
it was
Like an air
the
fryer?
big hot logic, and it didn't work right. These were smaller potatoes. They weren't baby potatoes, but they were small. And every day I'd bite it and go, "Yep, not ready yet." And then
Oh.
she had a battery for it to be in the car, and we'd plug it in the hotel room because we did a road trip. Because I was like,
Hmm.
"Oh yeah, let's get these cooked up so we'll have a happy snack when we get to the hotel." Um, but like little things. So like we did have some treats and some different things. And I will always take little bites of something. Like we're not talking about meat or bacon or something like that, but
Hmm.
if there's a new vegan cheese or if there's
Hmm.
a new vegan donut, I probably not all at once take all the bites, but take a bite and then I'll go back and I'll create a whole food plant-based no oil alternative. So that is
Yeah,
also
that's
in
fun. I love
my,
doing that.
right? It's super fun.
Yeah.
And but it was just very interesting because we thought, okay, are we going to be like, because we did have a New York bagel with vegan cream cheese, and that
Yum.
and it was so delicious. And even as we're eating it, we're like, okay, do we feel like we need bagels at home? Are we going to be okay not having this again? And we were like, yeah, like I'm super over analytical, but we just keep meeting and having this
You can't go to
conversation.
New York and not have a bagel with vegan cream cheese. It's just such a rite of passage.
Right, and I lived in New York for a while too, and I'm like, "Oh my goodness," because we were driving all the way up to Amesbury, Massachusetts. And but like when we were in Salem for a day, we found a really great bowl restaurant and had teriyaki tofu and butternut squash soup, and
Hmm.
so while those weren't perfect, they were close enough. And I think when we're looking at things, it is about you and where you
Hmm.
are right now and how you feel. Like for me, last month, my liver numbers came back into normal. So this month,
Hmm.
my goal was, with all the traveling, not to lose, not to gain any weight. And so far,
Mm.
I've lost like half a pound, which is much less than I usually lose. But I was freaked out a week before we went away for 8 days and freaked out for 10 days after we got back trying to busy. So my cortisol has been off. And I think
I
it's
was going to say that has so much to do with it. That was a conversation that I had last night with the guy. I'm like, well, how's your sleep? How's your exercise? Like, what? Let's look at, let's get together and look at everything. Because most people don't realize if they're not sleeping well or if they're stressed out all the time, that's going to impact, blood sugar, their cholesterol, so many different factors.
and it's just a matter, and again, I would never tell everyone to do things the way we're doing it, but I am trying to tell you as we
Hmm.
look, because at this point, for right now, I don't consider myself to be addicted to food. And
Mm.
but I will also say in the same sentence, if I get super depressed, that's how I gained 30 pounds over the pandemic. I got in such a bad depression that I wasn't walking. I wasn't really making any food. We were getting takeout food all the time.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
again, that doesn't mean that I'm not a little nervous about that situation happening, so
Yeah, but what I'm hearing from you though is that, and you started to say it, and I think this is important. Like you went to New York and you had a bagel with vegan cream cheese, but you don't feel like you have to have a freezer full of New York bagels and vegan cream cheese in your fridge. Like you were able to enjoy it, and then you're home and you're making your pumpkin dishes from scratch and all the wonderful, delicious whole food plant-based no oil food that you make because you can do that, you don't feel the need to continue that way. And I think it's important to give yourself that permission that all of a sudden And we talked about that. Like if you go out and have, greasy vegan pizza, then the next day and you have oatmeal for breakfast and you're back on track, as long as you're not like stuck eating that greasy vegan pizza 3 times a day, then just let it go. Like move on from it. Don't create a whole thing around it. Don't cling to that. I was bad, because I don't like to look at any of it as bad or good. I've really been focusing on this lately. It's more about like what is going to serve you to reach your goals and be in alignment with your values and the way you want to see yourself. And again, I think about my client back, from Texas, who, eating that Beyond Burger helped him toward the goal of the way he wanted to be, which was to eat less animal products and to, start to change his habits. Um, so.
And I love that too, because I think one of the hardest things is that we judge ourselves and we stop ourselves.
Mhm.
And I can be a neurotic little bunny. So let me just get that on the table for those of you who haven't figured it out yet. And when
That's
my
why we're
brain
such good friends.
we need our own neurotic bunny hutch. That could be our new product.
Exactly.
But it's just like, it's so easy to get into your head. And I mean, most of us, I've learned that some people don't have inner dialogue. That I just don't
Mhm.
even know what that would be like, because I have a whole committee up there. Like they're talking, should you have water? Can you have some more tea? There's this conversation all the time. And one of the things when we worked with Howard Jacobson, Cheryl and I, in I think it was 2018 or 2019, and the first thing he likes to do is talk about, what are you going to do when you fail? What are you going to do when you don't follow through with something you say? And then, okay, then what happens then? Then what do you do after that? And so I think having a plan, because with all the things going on in our head, and I can get touchy. I haven't been. So if any of you who have
Mhm.
asked me about weight loss the past few days, it's not bothered me. But sometimes I can get a little touchy about that, because I may not be ready to go, my plan is different for October, and having to explain
Mhm.
myself. Sometimes I need to figure all that out, right? But
Mhm.
I think
Mhm.
we went on this trip, with a crap load of food that we actually did not have any time to cook for the conference. Like, I was eating a salad on the bus going from class to class, because there was like less time than we thought. But we had like some dumplings. That's not,
Mhm.
flours and dry starch isn't number one on the things we want to eat. However, if we could have some brown rice and some steamed vegetable dumplings, that's way better than a cream cheese sandwich or picking the chicken off of a chicken salad because there's nothing to
Right.
eat.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's so true. You've really got to be able to be a little more fluid, particularly when you're traveling with your environment. And there's a lot of various types of tips and tricks you can do as you get more into it and it becomes more natural. You don't have to work so hard to figure it out over time. Um, but you said something earlier, it's like, I want to talk about how you feel, because, I think that's really important to start to tune in to your body's needs. But also, I also was, I'm really interested in all the voices in my head too, because I've been a self-flagellator since I was a kid, and I've been working really hard over many years to shut them up. And through the IFS, I think I told you I'm working with a coach who does internal family systems. I've been learning to befriend those voices and see their place. It's like group therapy with your family, but it's in your head. So you're but that's another conversation. But I want to talk about how food makes you feel too, though, because I think that, you know, I don't think we're not really taught, I think, to pay attention so much to that. But I think as you start to eat more whole food, plant-based, because the food is so nutrient dense and so full of antioxidants, you do start to feel better, and you do start to notice how food makes you feel. And that's part of the journey. And really being able to listen to that and notice that is a gift.
I love that you're talking about that too, because I think it ties in a lot too as part of your self image.
Hmm.
Um, because if you're looking, it's very interesting because Cheryl is still experiencing a hunger she was not experiencing before we went on vacation. So she's trying
Hmm.
because she was
Hmm.
not having enough calories, right? Um,
Hmm. That's a
and
big mistake. That's why people fail, because they restrict so much and then they get so hungry and they just will eat whatever's there. So thank you for bringing that up. Restricting is very dangerous.
right, and it's very interesting because she wasn't trying to. We were trying to eat. I
Right.
tell you that there just wasn't. And so, like sometimes,
Right.
like even at night before we would go to bed, I'd be in my little hot pot cooking us up some rice, so we'd have a little snack. So maybe we'd do better tomorrow. Um, but I think it does get so tied in because of that committee in your head. So at least
Hmm.
maybe I can talk about my committee and maybe we'll see if it's like yours or not. Because one of the things that Dr. Lim from the McDougall program said to me that was so powerful on the first meeting I had, and this is why I said, looked at Cheryl and said, can he move in with us? Is that he said, I want you to love on the parts of you you want to cut out. They're there for a reason. And so, like the voice that's constantly like,
Mm.
nah, 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 don't do this, don't do that. It's
Yeah,
trying to
yeah,
protect you from something. It doesn't mean,
yeah.
and befriending it, I'm hearing other people who are doing internal family systems that sounds really interesting to me. But that part of you is the one that's going, don't eat that, don't do this. In 1976, your mom said this about this food, and I'm
Right,
not
right.
going to let you have it. And I think it's, for me, it's kind of that same voice that goes, you probably don't want to do lives because you're heavier and they're not. So to me, it's a lot of that similar
Mm.
negative voice. It comes from the
Hmm.
same place. And I think when we, at least for me, so I wasn't feeling guilty about turp because we ate pretty well in general. I feel like that we had two bad meals. One at the dinner for the conference, I ate
Hmm.
potatoes roasted in oil, and I would have just like I had to have those potatoes. Like you have no idea how much I had to have those potatoes, and it wasn't because of the oil. It's because once again for another meal I had salad, and so I'm like,
Hmm.
give me some starch. Um, and other times I was kind of starting to feel bad, starting to feel like guilty, and I tried to step back and I'm like, probably what would Dr. McDougall say in this situation or somebody else, and I'm putting words in their mouth, so but I was assuming that my health specialist Stacy, and she did, and actually she did say this, is like, I'm glad you got some starch, and I'm glad that you're going to
Hmm.
be able to start eating and making your own food choices tomorrow, because this is all, it was
Hmm.
like being a kid, because I only
Yeah,
had what I had. I couldn't just like pull out my
yeah.
credit card and go to the store.
No,
um,
you do the best with what you've got in that moment, and that's the best you can do.
But it's easy to take that and then spiral. Like,
Mm.
okay, well, I did that. And then you could wake up in the morning and go, yeah, I don't feel good. Because, of course, you don't. You ate some things that don't feel good to you. So then that can translate to, oh, I'm feeling really fat today. Wonder, and it could just be this
Mm.
spiral, like, or up here
Yeah,
spiral. I don't know if
yeah, that's
you
interesting.
experience that, something like that. All it takes is one thing sometimes.
Well, it's funny because I'm sitting here thinking I got to share this with you. I love, and I know you do too. I love to cook. To cook. I love to eat my own food. Um, there's probably some part of me that's like I tend to hoard ingredients, so like I like to make sure I always have can throw something together. Over many years of this, like we're pretty good at throwing things together, and it's usually pretty simple. It tastes great, but it's usually just something simple. Could be a baked potato, could be some rice and some beans or whatever. And last night we went to Millennium, which is a fantastic, famous vegan restaurant in Oakland, and the food is very rich. And it was a tasting menu that the San Francisco Vegan Society they do these events. And so it's prefix and you get to choose like one appetizer, one entree, and a dessert. And I was like, I don't, eat this kind of food very often. And I am going to just enjoy every bite. And I did. And I was so full. I was stuffed. I was like, oh, that doesn't feel so good. And then I got home and I had the worst indigestion. I was like, I thought I was gonna die. I was like, and and their food is fabulous, but it's a much more rich versions of things I make at home. There's a lot of oil, there's vegan cheese, there's a lot of salt and vegan butter and sugar, and and not that and none of that's bad. Don't get me wrong. It's just all at once. And just no censoring myself. That was an interesting experience to have, to just say, you know what, you could have enjoyed that meal and maybe eaten a little bit less of it. Like you could have taken a couple, like you didn't have to finish the dessert, but it was so good.
I totally get that. And like the first time we went to there's vegan Indian buffet, and we're trying to decide if we're going tonight or not, too.
Mhm.
So every other week it's beautiful, and there's so many veggies and things. It is not oil free. It is whole food plant based, but that's about all you're getting. But the first time we had gone, because we saw some friends had gone, and I thought it was just a one-time thing, and I was like, no. And we ate. So we usually try to eat to 80% full, which is like what the Blue Zones say and Dr. Lim says. And in general, if you do that, even if you mess up a little bit, you're usually, it's not as bad on the other end. It's not Thanksgiving.
No, I ate to 110% last night.
Well, the first Indian buffet, we ate at 100%. Like, and then we were like, so on the way home again, because, I'm like, I don't know, I want to be teacher's pet or something in my head. So I'm like, okay, do we feel like we have to have Indian food tomorrow? So like I do this whole list, and then I'm like, what would we do differently if we go back? Do we feel like, and I said, tomorrow we'll decide how we feel and if we can go back. And both of us were just like, we would not eat this much. And it was because it was I think when it's the first, the only, that's when it's a lot easier to kind of go, oh, maybe I shouldn't have tried that curry again, or maybe I shouldn't have had, because like sometimes I'll even eat some fruit and salad at the end because somehow that makes it all better, right? But I'm like, no, I shoved that in there. That was not a helper.
Well, I mean, I love we're having this conversation because it's really important, because let's talk about why we're here and why we're having this discussion to begin with. It's like, let's take the obsession with how we think we need to look off. Let's take that pressure off, because that to me is the unhealthy driver for a lot of people and their choices. Let's focus on the food that's going to help us thrive in our lives, how we feel, how our health is, and but still enjoy it. Like that's really important to me, that we still, helping people realize that it's like deprivation is not part of the success. Bland, nothing but, salads, which I love salads, and salads can be amazing. But like when most of us think of salads, we're not really thinking about those amazing salads that have beans and grains and all kinds of things in them, right? But for me, that's the key here about this conversation. It's like, let's eat to thrive, not because we have this pressure to look a certain way to others. And that's my goal.
Well, and I love that too. And one of the reasons we're having these conversations, I think, in case there's new people, is because there's not a lot of people in the whole food plant-based, especially the whole food plant-based no oil and beyond communities talking about that. Sometimes there's a stigma around being heavier in that community. And I think that the only way to lift that stigma is for us to talk about it. And when we had our conversation last week, I got a lot of feedback from people who were really happy because a lot of people feel are like me. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm at the beginning of my weight loss journey. I
Mm-hmm.
achieved a health goal. I still want to lose some more weight. I don't know what that looks like, and I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I see with the pressure sometimes, and with me even telling you guys, sometimes it feels like pressure even if you're not putting pressure on, right? That,
Mm-hmm.
Cheryl's talked about too. What if we don't lose weight in October? Are people going to be disappointed? Or are people going to now decide that I'm a real fat person instead of a whole food plant-based fat person? Like there's,
Mm.
is it okay to be fat as I'm losing weight? And my answer, surprise, is unless somebody's hiding the pill from me that you take when you sign the whole food plant-based no oil oath, and you magically drop anywhere from that last 5 pounds to 100 or 200 or 300 pounds, it takes time.
Hmm.
And we
It
have
does.
to nurture
Yeah.
people during that time.
Well, and I want, and you and Cheryl are having an experience of feeling better, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The feeling better is just, it's huge. And so
Mm-hmm.
she's off of most of her medications. Um, my liver numbers are doing well. I expect her to get off of some more of her medicine by the end of the year. It's just,
So
um,
that's a big motivator for you guys.
oh yeah,
Well, and also I want to say, and I know we talked about this last time too, it's like you're doing it the healthy way, the sustainable way. Because what you're doing is you're like, think about all the freaking crazy fad diets. People yo-yo on diets all the time. Yeah, you can go keto and paleo, you can drop, 20 pounds in a month or whatever, but that weight is going to rebound as soon as you stop doing that. What you're talking about is making habit changes that are for a lifetime, that are doable, sustainable, serving your goals.
mhm,
It does, you're not in this restrictive mentality. I can't have that and I can't have that. This is where we get to work on the language a little bit. I choose this instead, not that's bad. No, that's
mm,
not bad. That's just not serving me, right? That's not going to serve my goal for myself, what I want for myself. And so I think that's the language around it is very, very important. And again, what you're doing is sustainable, and it's a lifestyle. It's not like a diet like we talked about.
exactly. And I think that's why it's so important in the whole food plant-based community, which is a lifestyle change. It's not a diet.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going
Mm-hmm.
on the keto diet for 30 days to do this thing. You're not going
Mm-hmm.
on, and whatever. This is like a big shift in everything. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that Jeremy's saying, and there's some other conversations going on, but it says as long as you're making gains on your goals, that's what matters in the end. And I
Mm-hmm.
think having a plan, like for me,
Mm-hmm.
kind of having a plan of, okay, if I go to the Indian restaurant tonight, that means that next week we don't go out to eat. We only eat at home. So we
Mm-hmm.
have certain things for us that maybe we do once a month or once a week.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
if we get to a point where we're not releasing weight in the way that we want to, we will look that over. And then,
Mm-hmm.
of course, it's all the starch you can eat, all the veggies you can eat.
Yeah.
We're
Well, and you bring up something important, like you and Cheryl and I do have a little more time to be able to focus on cooking and eating at home. And I think that that's a really important priority people should make if they can. I've worked with a lot of people who weren't healthy because they worked crazy, 60-hour work weeks, and they didn't prioritize that. And that's where they sort of fell into this unhealthy way of eating. And so if you're not ready to give up that 60-hour week job, or if you're a shift worker and you just can't control a lot of that, then the strategy needs to be different. The strategy needs to be, how can I do the best with what I've got in the environments I'm in? So I think that's really important to remember too. Like there are different ways to do this. And I think it's most important to, instead of trying to change everything, which is going to set you up to fail, let's try to change what we can within the confines that we have right now. And that's I think that's a very important thing to remember too, because there might be people watching who say, I just don't have time. I can't. I'm not home that much. I've got to be, again, shift workers are a great example. I've worked with a lot of people who were like ER, they worked, they were ER doctors, or they worked back of house, and they stocked the shelves at Whole Foods, from whatever 8 at night till 6 in the morning. So, in which case we have to look at how can we help you reach your goals with the tools that you've got and the environment you're in.
I love that. It fits in with one of the comments too. Someone was talking about she's in a food desert. And like let me see if I can go back, a real food desert in that, yeah, Dollar General is the only grocery store in town. Walmart's 20 miles away. And while Walmart's doing good, and depending on the place, our Dollar Generals are crap where I am. But I know some people's Dollar Generals had like some fresh foods and things as well. So hopefully yours does, and hopefully you can get a ride to Walmart. But like one thing I would say, and I'm guilty of, I work a lot now too anyhow, but before I did, and that's one of the reasons, like figuring out a way that you can meal prep or have things as simple as possible. Like some people are working on getting all the toxins and waste out of their lives. Canned beans aren't for them. Canned beans are great for someone who doesn't have time to do this. And so there's different levels, different places in your life. Like someone was I heard someone saying something about you should never buy packaged cut up butternut squash. And then I'm like, well, what about the person who has severe arthritis and can't ever cut up a butternut squash? So I think it's important that we do include accessibility, and like that's one of the reasons my first cookbook was a slow cooker cookbook, because I could put food in there, I could go to work, and I could come home and a meal was ready for me. So, and when we traveled, and there are some things we would do different, but we carried like some Tasty Bite packets, which have a little oil, but are pretty darn good, better than what you can get on the road. We did some Plant Strong chili, different things that we could put in these containers. Now, unfortunately, those kind of prepared foods are going to cost more, but you can get 4 cans of different beans, a can of corn, a can of tomatoes, and some chili powder, and make a beautiful chili and pack it up in the freezer.
Yeah, I worked with clients. I actually really enjoy doing this, and I wish I could do it more now, but pre-pandemic, I would take them shopping. And I had clients who were in this similar food deserts to the person who made that comment about having like the Dollar General. And so we would go in the local bodega, and most of the food we would find for them was canned or frozen or packaged. But we would figure out, the best options in that environment. And sometimes it was a can of refried beans that was cooked, that had oil, not lard. And we'd find some tortillas, and it would be canned corn instead of fresh corn or frozen corn, and canned tomatoes. And so just, my advice always is, if your goal is to go whole food plant-based and that's your only option, then learning to read labels is really a huge tool for you. Look at the first ingredients, try to look for whole, not fractured or isolates. The fewer ingredients on that list, the better. If there's, 5 or less, right? And then look for the, is it lard or is it oil? Oil is going to be better than lard. If you can get, refried beans that don't have lard or oil, even better. There's more and more companies. Even Rosarita is coming. These fat-free, right? So that's where label reading would be really important if all you've got is Dollar General, and even Walmart and some of the local food desert sort of convenient markets. I really wanted to still do this. I had talked about with a health coach I was working with. I'm like, I want to go into 7-Eleven, because there's 7-Elevens everywhere, and I want to do a video of how to assemble like a healthier meal in a 7-Eleven. I haven't done it yet, but like it's something I want to do. You
have to do this. And
because like for people traveling, right? If like you're stopping at the gas station and it's got a 7-Eleven attached to it, it's like, can I put a meal together if I don't have my cooler filled with the stuff from home, you know?
I think that's great. And Susan's saying, we cannot all do the same things. Our bodies are unique and we have to support our best selves. And I
Hmm.
will say that I've been very impressed with Walmart as far
Yeah.
as, like, it may not be all whole food, plant-based, no oil, but we actually got, once we had bought the dumplings, left the dumplings here, and rebought the dumplings on our trip at a Walmart. But the fact that Walmart has vegan dumplings, tofu,
Excuse
tempeh,
me.
and they
Hmm.
do have a little organic section of veggies, um, which is not perfect. And also, one thing I would say, depending on what kind of food desert you're in. So there's
Hmm.
more of inner city food deserts, and this can be harder
Absolutely.
there, and more like I live out in the middle of nowhere food desert.
Right.
If you
Right.
live out in the middle of nowhere, oftentimes you may live near a producing farm. And if you
Hmm.
can find a farmer, oftentimes either you can buy a CSA share or trade your time in packing up CSA shares
Absolutely.
to get a CSA share. And that is one way to get
Which is,
fresh produce.
yeah. For those of you who don't know, CSA means community supported agriculture, right? And so you oftentimes these farms will put boxes together that you can buy, and the cost is very affordable. And like you said, a lot of them will, you can volunteer a couple of hours a week and get a beautiful box of fresh produce. And it's seasonal and it's local, right? But I also become, I used to be a snob, total snob about frozen vegetables. Just would turn my nose up. But frozen vegetables are awesome, and oftentimes have more nutrients than the fresh vegetables that have been on a truck and in a food storage for weeks at a time, because when they flash freeze, then they're usually at the peak of their ripeness when all the nutrients are most rich. So you're getting that nutrition. Certain vegetables, texture wise aren't going to hold up, but for things like chili or stews or soups, if you can get your hands on frozen vegetables, you can eat pretty well. So most of those markets, a lot of them, I don't know about Family Dollar, but a lot of markets in the more rural areas or even the inner city have some version of frozen vegetables and
I
fruits.
That's really good. And Apple is also saying that she doesn't live in a food desert, but she's housebound and grow lots of her greens indoors, like
Hmm.
microgreens, sprouts, lettuces,
Hmm.
kales. And that's just a beautiful idea too, is that you can do what you can. And I just want everyone to know, and sometimes, like, depending on what city you're in, some inner cities actually have garden programs and garden shares. I don't know if seeds here in Durham lasted through the pandemic. They've
Hmm.
not been they used to be at the farmers market, and they taught kids how to grow vegetables. So they had this little farm in the city. I mean, Durham isn't that big. It's not like New York, so there's a place to have a bit of land.
Hmm.
But what I loved is around the fenced area where people could come in and do things, and they grew things both to sell different places. They
Hmm.
had vegetable beds all around it with signs saying
Hmm.
free, pick what you need.
See, this is my dream. You know, Ron Finley, the gangsta gardener in South Central LA. That's like kind of his thing. And I love that. I like when I was walking through Golden Gate Park with some friends recently, I thought, I said to them, I said, imagine if all these trees and these shrubs and things were growing produce that people could just come and get. Like nobody would be hungry. Like, can we just create community parks and gardens, and can we plant this stuff in our front lawns for people to, when they're walking by, grab an apple or some chard. That's like my Eden, my dream, that we lived in a world where you could walk through a city or a town, and produce would be growing everywhere, and the community would be helping and tending to it.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that too. And it's hard sometimes that it's not. But I just want everyone to know, like, look around where you are. Obviously, if you're
Hmm.
watching this, you have access to the internet. And then just
Hmm.
Google and see if there's anything you can be a part of, because I am pretty sure if you were a lower income person that you could probably volunteer at Seeds and get, like, they had
Yeah.
beautiful produce and herbs. Our farmers market has really exploded, so, and
Hmm.
changed where everybody is. So they could be there. And if they are, somebody tell me, because
Yeah.
I always bought from them because I felt like
Hmm.
they were doing such a good thing for the community. And I know we need to go in just a second. I want to, two things. Justine says, my sister lives in rural Maine. They have a community garden. And that's another thing we didn't talk about. Some places
Hmm.
have community gardens where you can get a plot. In the UK, that happens a lot, an allotment.
Hmm.
Pick whatever fruits and veggies that they need. I know there's another
I love
place
that.
near me that if you are willing to work in the garden, you get a share from the garden.
Yes. Well, in Austin, there are urban farms where you can volunteer and they grow beautiful produce. Like Boggy Creek, and I'm trying to remember what some of the other ones are. Now that I'm in San Francisco, I've forgotten everything about Austin. But
I just forget
but
all
there
the
they.
things about everything, so don't worry. And then before we say goodbye, I know TS has been showing up a lot and
Mhm.
just started eating this way for health. Need to personally be more strict. I'm finding that the starch-based meals fill me up physically. However, my mind feels hungry for more processed items. Do you have any
Mm.
suggestions?
What specific processed items? Is it salty, crunchy, sweet? Is it baked goods?
I'm not getting anything yet, but if you tell me TS,
Mm-hmm.
I will say, but why don't you do one for each? Maybe
Mm-hmm.
an
Mm-hmm.
easy,
Mm-hmm.
affordable option if possible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But yeah, because I always like to, I mean, oftentimes with cravings, I just think even though you're eating a lot of starch and you think you're being full, you're not having enough variety. So maybe you need more legumes with your starch, or, some starchy vegetables. I'm not really sure what the starch is. Um, so
Those are
that
all
could
great
help.
questions.
Yeah, and yeah, just having, when you were talking about Cheryl just being hungry because you guys were so restrictive of what you had access to, that's one of the ways people fail when they go whole food plant-based is they restrict too much. If you stick to whole unprocessed foods like whole grains and legumes and fruits and vegetables and potatoes and eat when you're hungry, you'll do okay.
So
And
I'm
all the
getting,
ways we talked.
oh, I'm so
Mhm.
sorry. So
Yeah.
salty, crunchy, like crackers, some vegan cookies. I haven't heard what starch that they're eating yet at this point, but that's what they're. And I will
Hmm.
say, so even on my side of things, one of the things that we often miss are the crunch because we're eating lots of cooked potatoes, lots of stews,
Hmm.
lots of rice. And one of the things I did was I like to pre-bake a bunch of potatoes and put them in for, I call them emergencies. And like yesterday, we took a walk and I was like, oh my God, I'm starving because we're re-regulating. And so I took the potato and cut it in chunks and just threw it in the air fryer. And that was like, I think we did 425 for about 20 minutes. They were pretty big
Hmm.
chunks. And they
Yeah,
had a
I have
nice
some
little crisp.
recipes. Yeah, so I always batch cook. I always cook, it's David and I, and I'll cook like 10 potatoes because
Yes.
we'll each have like two baked with like vegetables and stuff. But because I always I slice them into rings with skin and all, and sprinkle them with some seasonings and put them in the air fryer I usually have them at 400 for like, 12 to 20 minutes. Like I'll have them in for 12 minutes, flip them over. And, I love those. And if you don't have an air fryer, you can just do it in the oven. But another thing I always have around for the person who's asking is I always have roasted chickpeas that I make in the air fryer or oven. And I have roasted tamari nuts and seeds. Like I do a lot of roasted sunflower seeds. I just dry roast them in a pan and I sprinkle them with tamari and they get nice and crispy. And I use those as garnishes. So like if I have a salad or a baked sweet potato, I'll put some on as a garnish, or I'll snack on them. I love air popcorn with some Bragg's spritzed on it and some garlic. Or I also always have baked tortilla chips. I take soft corn tortillas in the air fryer or the oven, and then I keep them once I bake them and they're crispy. I keep them in a Ziploc bag because those are good for if you're having a salty, crunchy craving, or if you're going to a Mexican restaurant, I love chips and salsa, then you can sneak your bag in and have it with the salsa on the table. So there are lots of different things you can do that are going to be more in alignment with what your goal is. Um, so they're just some of my tips. And then if you're not cooking them, I mean, I know it sounds so like 80s or whatever, but I love rice cakes, you know? And I like Lundberg makes those thin stackers. I still love rice cakes. I love air popped popcorn, like I said, with seasoned with nutritional yeast and some Bragg's aminos. You can get a spray bottle, and it'll give it a little saltiness and help the other stuff stick. So there are lots of things you can be doing, and I'm sure Kathy, you've got lots of tips on that too.
Yeah, but we've been doing our popcorn with pickle juice, and it's been
Oh,
awesome. And it kind of
are you
salts it.
spraying it? It doesn't.
No,
It
so
doesn't
we
get soggy.
no, it's crazy. So like what we do,
Mhm.
so we've got this little popcorn maker that's glass that you put in the microwave, and we put
Oh,
like
I have one of those. I
a
have
couple
one of
of
those. Yeah.
tablespoons of stuff from the pickle jar, the vinegar from the pickle jar, and it just kind of sticks on, and it does make it harder to clean because it kind of dries up on the
So
bottom a
wait,
little
you
bit.
put it in with the kernels? You put the pickle juice with the kernels?
Yes.
Ooh, I'm gonna do that. I love that idea.
It's not like someone in the live, and I don't remember who it was, told me they did it, and so we tried it, and it's awesome. And it's
You could probably
so
do
much
like,
less salt. I mean, if
yeah,
you're a no salt person, that would add salt because pickles have salt in there, and you might be
yeah,
able to
yeah.
try doing it with like just an apple cider vinegar because I
Interesting.
noticed
Yeah,
that will also give you a little bit of stuff. And
like tang.
right, thank you. Stuff. Don't you like if I can't, let's just do a filler word. And so Tia says my starch is usually oatmeal, potatoes, eat till full, then sweet potatoes. So it probably is
Hmm.
also, I don't know when you started TS, but some of it takes a little while. And then other people, like they're as restricted as they need to be. Sometimes they go a
Hmm.
little bit further, and then some other
Hmm.
cravings go away. I've heard about that in some of Chef AJ's group. And TS, I think you were in the I think it's Thriving at 40's group that we talked to last night. But if you have some other questions, you can certainly ask me. And then Apple was saying, my experience with cravings is that they are what I habitually eat. If I want to
Mm.
shift something out, then I have to eliminate it and just be okay with the discomfort for a bit of time. The craving will pass.
Hmm.
And I
Mm.
like that. And Rebecca says, I wonder about popcorn with sauerkraut juice. And I'm like,
I
so
almost
do
said that when
I.
you said pickle juice. I'm like, yeah, because I have that Trader Joe's dill sauerkraut in the fridge, the dill pickle sauerkraut. I'm like, ooh, I could use that. Try that.
Ooh, and I made my first batch of sauerkraut, so maybe I can dip some juice out. Cheryl will not be happy. Cheryl is eating cabbage now, which she's never done before, but she's always like, "Why are you cutting up all that cabbage?" And Apple says the discomfort hasn't killed me yet, and
Yeah.
it's true. Like
Mm.
there's a middle ground we have to come to
Yeah.
sometimes.
I love also just thinking of the crunch. I really love texture too. Like, so I'm always throwing like a few walnuts on my oatmeal, or like I said, roasted crispy chickpeas on my baked potato or on my salad. But you can buy, again, not just rice cakes, but I know they can be pricey, but like kale chips, right? And I really love those Bear apple, Fuji apple, and the banana chips. They're really crispy.
Oh, and those are
And those
easy
make,
to make, you guys. Like so, like you just take a whole apple because you know how they always have the seeds in the middle, and you could core an
hmm,
apple and then
hmm,
just use a mandolin, and
hmm.
chances are real good at a thrift store. You can find an inexpensive mandolin because they're a little scary. Wear gloves, be careful, follow
I
the
love my
instructions.
mandolins.
But
Yes,
I
yeah,
have
you
a
do.
little OXO one
Flat
that you
hand.
hold it.
Don't do it like, yeah, don't do it
No,
like this. Whatever you do, if you do, if you hold, if you're not using the thing, then flat hand, flat hand.
we always use the thing is how I
Mhm.
say. What you do without that, I don't need to know about. But like, just be real safe because I've sliced the skin off of my thumb plenty of times. But you can slice that, and then you can either put it in your oven at the lowest temperature and dehydrate it. I use the
Mhm.
Breville dehydrator, or you can
Mhm.
get a really inexpensive dehydrator, usually for about $10 at the thrift store. And then you can
Mm.
start dehydrating all the things like Marilyn
Well,
does.
and to Apple's point, I mean, over time when you're eating this way, the cravings kind of stop. You don't really have as many cravings for those kinds of things. So eventually, I don't think that you're going to have to deal with the discomfort so much. But I do love having healthy options. So like the apple chips you're talking about, or the dill pickle popcorn, because then you can enjoy it and not, know you're not harming your body.
And it's kind of nice to just use what's seasonally available because it's cheaper. So, like
Mm-hmm.
apples are in season. So, we have
Mm-hmm.
the Raleigh Farmers Market. So, like when fruits and when well, we don't do peaches, strawberries. When strawberries are in season, you can buy a giant thing of, they're either like pie strawberries or this, whatever. What it means is they're smushed, and if you don't do something with them today, they're going to mold. But right now, they're okay. So you either have to take them home, puree them, freeze them, or you could dehydrate them and make strawberry powder out of them. You could do all
Mm-hmm.
these different things. With apples, if you can go and get a box of apples, because they're not going to last forever, you can put some in the fridge.
Mm-hmm.
You could go ahead and cook some down and make some apple butter. This is why all these things are seasonal, right? Like when we go, ooh, pumpkin spice, ooh, apple spice. It's, or why we want strawberries, blueberries, and peaches in the summer. But
Mm-hmm.
we are
Mm-hmm.
way over time for you, and I
We
appreciate
are,
you
I
going.
know. Speaking of, so right now, I'm getting ready to go to a very long movie with some friends, and I'm going to make my air popped popcorn, and I'm going to spritz it with some Brags that'll help the nutritional yeast and the garlic powder stick. And I always bring that in my bag to the movie theater so that I can enjoy my popcorn and not feel terrible afterwards.
I love that, and I think it's okay. Like, it's okay to sneak some things in. You paid plenty for the movie.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, enjoy your movie, and everybody, thanks so much for joining in. We'll be doing another show next week,
To
and
be
we'll,
continued, this conversation. I love it. Thank you so much for hosting and opening it up to all of us.
yeah, I think it's important. And if you guys have some questions, of course, you can email me at kathyhester@gmail.com. You can always come in and ask during the show. I try to get to everything. If I don't, Lisa might pop in and take a look. If I go back and see something, I will try and put it out to her, okay? But have a good movie, and everybody have a good
Thank
day.
you.
Do something kind for yourself, and then I will see you guys real soon.